Hello again, friends. This is Brittany Bowles with take 2 of chapter 14, Love and Consent, from my book, Finding Starlight. I just recorded this whole chapter and then I downloaded it to upload it to YouTube and my website and realized that there was awful sound interference. So I'm so sorry to whoever already watched this, but this is take 2 because last time the sound was horrible. Kathy, can you hear me okay right now? I see that you're logged in. Is the sound better this time? I hope so. I'm going to take no answer as a good answer. So this is chapter 14 of my book. This chapter is called Love and Consent. And again, I am a little sick, so just bear with me as I'm drinking tea. Oh, good. Okay, so you can hear me. Here we go. Chapter 14 of Finding Starlight by me, Brittany Bowles. Let's just double check your itinerary, my aunt wisely advised. I had a few more days with her, back in my safe place, her living room in Phoenix, with the funeral behind me. We pulled it up on the computer and were stunned to realize that the flight actually left the next day, not later in the week as we thought. Oh no, I cried. I'm not ready to go yet. I can't leave tomorrow. Shit, she answered, equally distressed. I can't believe it's been 6 weeks already. Where did the time go? I need to find Justin tonight. I can't leave. I won't leave without saying goodbye to him, I told her in complete earnestness. Okay. I'll call Mark and see if we can get you together, she promised, adding, you get packing. It took an hour to locate him at a party on the other side of town. It took another hour for him to get back to his apartment, and 10 minutes for me to run there to him. He opened the door and his arms to me. I threw myself into him, holding on with every ounce of strength and love that I possessed. I can't do this, I whispered. With a profound gentleness and compassion belying his age. He led me to the couch. He held me as tears streamed freely down my face. Kiss me, please, I begged, desperate to feel only him, to drink in the moment, to erase everything else. He did, gently, carefully, watching my eyes as he came close. It's like he knows, I thought. I love you, he said, tears forming in his once hard eyes. You can do anything, and I know that you will. I tasted salt on his lips. We sat together all night, talking, crying, and holding on. Under the Phoenix night sky, streetlights dim and traffic loud, I told him. And we're paused. Oh my goodness. What is happening? It's back! Yay! It still tells me that I have poor connection. Mercury is about to be in retrograde. Okay, I'm live now. I'll take your word for it. My computer still says trying to reconnect. Would you believe this is take 2? I love you, he said, tears forming in his own once hard eyes. Okay, Thank you. Thank you, guys. You can do anything, anything, and I know that you will. I tasted salt on his lips. We sat together all night, talking, crying, and holding on. Finally, he declared that it was time to go and walked me home. On the front lawn, under the Phoenix night sky, streetlights dim and traffic loud, I told him, I love you too. I didn't open my eyes until we were back in the forest. The cloud brought me close enough to the waterfall to be sprayed by the mist. Cool drops of water were crisp and light, rejuvenating my spirit and clearing away the hot, dried tears from my cheeks. I reached into the rainbow-tinted stream and let the water run over my hands and arms. When I was finished, I said softly to the cloud or the waterfall, or maybe both, thank you. I was carried back to the moss and Katrina, who was waiting patiently upon her mushroom. What happened to Justin? Katrina asked when I was settled. The smaller version of the cloud took its place on my lap. We wrote beautiful, desperate love letters to each other for a long time, nearly a year. I missed him with my whole heart. I was utterly in love with him. He went for his GED and got his life relatively back together. He said at one point that he was going to move up to Minnesota to be with me until I finished school. He wanted to be with me, to support me, and be by my side. Wow, she breathed. That's intense for someone so young. That's Justin. That was me at the time. I gave her a look. Actually, I guess it still is me. Intensity is kind of my thing. We laughed. Anyway, as you know, my dad was crazy, and life in Minnesota was not the same as it was out west. There was no way we could be together, and him even suggesting it made me realize how much of his life I was taking up. I talked to my best friend, and we came up with a solution. It broke my heart, but I knew it was the right thing to do for him. I wrote him a letter explaining that his lifestyle just wasn't conducive to my beliefs and values, and that we had to break it off. I wanted him to go on with his life and let me be. And he did? Katrina asked. He did. That's the kind of person he was. He valued my values more than I did. He was sure that I was going to go off and do great things, and that I was better than him. He took what I wrote as truth, even though part of me secretly wanted him, and waited for him, to show up at my doorstep. He never came, of course. Many years later, a friend convinced me to call my auntie to find out what happened to Justin. It was a brief, weird conversation. She had always avoided telling me about him, insisting that I let it go and that he wasn't good for me. That night, I learned that he had gotten his girlfriend pregnant. And that was that. I sent him all the love and hopefulness I could muster, and I still do when I think of him. But that was the end of it for me. He had truly moved on, and could maybe even be happy. Young love, Katrina said, smiling fondly. It was a summer of love in one way, I agreed. But I stopped, looking down at the ground between us. What you saw with Chad, that is my darkest secret. I'm not even sure why we had to go there. I'm embarrassed that you had to see it. It's your secret? She said with a stern tone I hadn't expected. Yeah, I answered, red with shame. You saw what I did, right? You saw what I did, right? Please don't make me explain it, I begged. What you did? She was wide-eyed and angry. I did not understand why she was so upset. Brittany, hear me now. You did nothing wrong. He took advantage of you. Then why do you seem so angry? I asked her, confused. She turned a shade of pinkish red all over. The sparkle dust that usually surrounded her became deep red and metallic white sparks, flashing and popping. I clutched the cloud. That's a scary display, I thought. I am angry, but not at you. She glared at something I couldn't see. I'm so sorry, she gasped, suddenly losing redness as rage turned to compassion. It pained me to hear you use those words. What I did. Brittany, hear me now, sweet girl. You did nothing wrong. But I let him, I kissed back, I stammered. That's why I hadn't told anyone. I was deeply ashamed of my part in it. I get that he was the adult in the situation and that I was in a vulnerable emotional state, I clarified, to be fair. But I never said no. I never stopped him. In fact, I sometimes wonder what message I sent him that made this seem okay. Was it my skin-tight clothes? Meeting him alone at night? Sitting too close? I trailed off, lost and wondering. There's a lot of science behind the way the brain reacts when faced with fear of sexual offense, she explained. We've heard a lot about fight or flight, but there's also freeze and fawn or befriend the enemy, she said, appealing to my reason. What happened to you is wrong. It's not your fault. She paused like she wanted to say more, and then finished with, I am sorry that this was done to you, and that you have lived so long with the blame. Do you really think that? Or are you just being protective and taking my side? I had to ask. Let's break this down in a less emotional way for a minute. What does consent look like? She asked. I sat in silence, shocked that I couldn't find an answer to such a simple question. The first year you visited Arizona, you and Jason shared a night of what you called heavy petting, right? Yes, we did, I answered. And you said you didn't go all the way because you had your period, she led. I nodded. Do you think he wanted to go all the way that night? She asked. Yes, I'd say he did, I answered, starting to understand. But he respected my choice, which we didn't even really talk about. We just gradually stopped what we were doing and fell asleep together. It was nice to be respected in that way, actually. That's consent, she said. She then continued with an example that put me into a different place, a position of power. Let's move to your time with Justin. Your first love, you called him. What I saw was that you wanted him to move faster than he was. You wanted him to kiss you and touch you in ways that he wasn't willing to do, at least not as soon as you requested. I looked down, feeling sheepish. Yeah, that's true. And how did you respond when he pulled away? She asked with utmost kindness. I don't know, I answered like I was asking a question. You either backed off and gave him space, or you used language to reframe your request in a way that would feel more comfortable. What you didn't do was ignore his cues and force yourself on him. Well, I could hardly force myself on anyone. That would be wrong and humiliating, I said without thinking. Yes, it would be, she said with her most pointed look. I knew where she was going with this by now, but I still couldn't seem to reconcile logic with the shame I felt in my stomach. And how did Chad respond to your cues? She asked. Instead of answering, I asked my own question. Did I give cues? You became silent. Your body was rigid. You tried to move away. And most importantly, you did not show enthusiasm or desire for his advances. You did not initiate any intimacy, nor return his with affection. Anyone looking in on that situation, which, thanks to our cloud friend, I was able to do, could clearly see that you were not into it. She explained. Was it that obvious? I asked, still needing clarity. It was, she assured me. But even if it wasn't, we've already discussed what consent is. Absence of consent is not consent. Kissing is not consent. Consent is enthusiastic, continuous, and obvious. Do you see? She asked. I think so, I answered. I mean, this is what I would tell anyone else in my place. A child can't give consent to an adult anyway. And I was a seriously messed up child at that point. She flew over to me then and took both of my hands in hers. Her eyes searched mine, and I felt warmth permeate my body. I was unable to look away. Tingling traveled from our clasped hands up my arms and into my belly. My breath slowed to match hers. When she spoke, I felt her voice within my chest. What happened is not your fault. You are not a bad person. What happened to you had nothing to do with who you were or anything you did. You are a beautiful and wonderful soul. She held me with her eyes and her hands. Warmth poured over me in waves. Finally, I nodded, breaking the spell. Okay, I swallowed. It wasn't my fault. I did nothing wrong, I repeated. I can see that now. I feel lighter somehow. What did you do? I found the places in your body that held trauma, she answered, and I helped you release it. The warmth in my chest and belly, I was awed. I felt much, much better. And that concludes chapter 14 of my book, Finding Starlight. It is so far unpublished, so the next chapter, chapter 15, will come out not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. And just a note on that piece on healing the trauma in our bodies. So many people reach out to me after I share chapters and say to me, thank you for sharing your story, because I can't share mine. I never have been able to, or I never will. But hearing you share it helps heal me. And that's the whole point, right? That's why I'm doing this. That's why I wrote it. But also, for those of you who don't know, I am a yoga instructor as well as a healer myself. I'm an intuitive and a Reiki master. And so I've been working on healing myself forever. And this is very true, that when something like this happens to us, when we experience trauma, our bodies hold on to that trauma. A lot of us have chronic pain, or chronic stomach issues, or nerve issues because we're holding on to trauma. Lady Gaga and Oprah just did a huge interview about this, actually, where Lady Gaga shared that she was having a trauma response that she was holding in her body that was showing up as fibromyalgia. So it's really important that we do this work to clear and release the trauma in our body. If you are having chronic pain or chronic health issues, I guarantee there's a spiritual component to that. And you don't have to write your story down and share it to the internet at all to release that. Bo Forbes has an entire book talking about her work with thousands of patients. She's a famous psychotherapist and healer. And she says all we have to do is breath work and body work to release our trauma. So I encourage you to look into that, especially if you know that you've had traumatic events in your life, and allow yourself, give yourself the gift of healing. Allow yourself to take that journey to release the cellular memory of not only your trauma, but also your ancestral trauma, the things that we've inherited, like I said, from the witches they burned, or from the things that happened in our timeline. We could heal past, present, and future by doing breath work and body work and energetic work. So find a practitioner, find someone, find a book, and do that work. You deserve to be light and free of this. We all do. We deserve to fly, to rise together. So anyway, that's enough for me today. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you in about a week and a half with chapter 15 of my book, Finding Starlight. Very much looking forward to signing an agent and or getting discovered. And until then, I'll see you out there. Thank you so much for listening. I really do love you so much.